Hi, and welcome to the masterclass for Albanso's Writer Archives. And I'm your host, Nikita. And today we have a very special guest on our podcast slash masterclass. Please introduce yourself.
Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Letlogonolo Moremi. I am an intellectual property and entertainment law consultant. I am the founder of Park Grey IP, which is Botswana's first, dedicated intellectual property and entertainment law consultancy practice.
Okay, first of all, I'm just really, really happy and stoked that there is an entertainment lawyer in Botswana. I mean, for so long,
Right,
I
right.
thought that you didn't exist.
Right.
So
right.
it's actually very, very helpful, especially with, the way the creative industry is going in Africa. More and more people are seeing it as a viable business opportunity.
Right.
So it's really nice to know we have someone to just knock on the door, just hi.
Great. I mean, I think that, like you're saying, it's about opportunity. It's about where the potential that the continent has at this point. I mean, over the past couple of years, we've been seeing the West sort of doing, in the first instance, it was coming here and taking the art. And now it's coming here and taking the IP. So we're seeing that sort of I don't want to call it theft on your podcast, but maybe off air I will.
Let's just shh. Don't tell anyone. But yes, you did mention a very important word right there, which is IP.
Right.
And that's basically what our masterclass is on today. So if those of you who remember our first ever workshop, our weekend workshop, we touched on the economics of the creative industry. So being able to take your talent from a talent to a viable craft. So something you can make money off, something you can work your business around. So before we get into that, let's first get a basic idea of the creative economy.
Right.
What is it?
So the creative economy, it's basically the sort of the economic network of creative labor, creative ideas. So it's people producing products by application of their creative capacities, and trading in those products between themselves and between the community. So this would be people who are either in science producing apps and things like that, or people who are producing paintings or producing music or producing solutions of any kind. So it's basically just how best does the human mind serve its environment, and that the economic activity surrounding that application of the human mind is basically the creative economy. And I think in Botswana, recently you've been talking a lot about transitioning from a resource-based economy to a knowledge-based economy.
Yeah.
So that basically means we're transitioning towards an economic setup where ideas and intellectual labor are going to be the lifeblood of the economy. So,
Absolutely agree. I totally agree with that transition, especially nowadays. If we just look at the recent pandemic,
Right.
a lot of resource-based companies and businesses were either getting bailed out or were retrenching. And you saw a lot of other businesses that were focused on creative and, skills sets, not just on the digital front, but creative as well.
Right.
Actually making strides and actually doing pretty well.
Right. Because I think the one thing that people needed the most in this pandemic was creativity. When you were at home, it was either somebody was making an app to make your life easier, making music to make your day better, some art, some movie, So it really showed us that creativity and creatives and the people who form that, the core of that creative economy might just be the most important people that we need to survive as human beings.
We've been new. Glad that the world is finally catching up. Guys.
Absolutely.
But I absolutely agree with you. It's really shone a light on how important that is. And with Botswana, the main chat has always been, guys, what happens when the diamonds run out?
Right.
What happens then?
Right.
And I feel like this is one viable thing to actually broach, to actually approach and say, listen, this is actually something we can go with.
Absolutely.
So with that being said, in terms of the creative economy, in terms of, taking skills and turning them into something equitable, if that's the correct way of using it. Okay, I'm in that mindset right now. I would never know this word outside of this podcast. But in terms of doing that, like just as an idea, how exactly have you seen it being done? Because there's so many people, especially in our group, that don't really understand how they can make a profit or how they can even make a business out of writing specifically, just writing for film or writing a book. Like, how have you personally seen it being done? If that makes sense.
I think I can share a bit about what I would share, with clients and the likes. And I mean, I began my creative journey way early. I was that child in primary school who was singing at every
getting a
talent
bio.
show.
Yes, tell us about you. I'm so excited.
So I think the transition for me happened when you begin to understand that what you are doing, first of all, is labor.
Hey,
and labor must be compensated. So when you begin to have that understanding of, okay, this is something that I'm great at and this is something that I love doing, but it's more than just that. This is actually labor. This is actually work. And also like on a secondary level, beginning to realize, okay, firstly, what I'm doing is labor, and what I'm producing is a product, an asset that has economic value, can be traded for economic value, etc., etc. So I think the people that I see succeeding, in terms of monetizing their creativity and making a business out of their creativity are the people who have reached that understanding of this is work. And therefore, I need to treat what my body does, what my mind does as work. I need to treat what my mind and my body produces as an asset that has economic value. So if I put it on the table and nobody's giving me economic value, then
we have a problem.
We have a problem there. This is the wrong table to be at. And it's very difficult to do that in an economy like Botswana where, a lot of kids that want to go into some aspect of the creative economy or the creative sectors, often we grow up knowing that these things are hobbies. These things are these things are hobbies. These things are not things you do seriously. So then we're at that point where we're trying to have a cultural shift towards appreciating that these things are, this is work, this is labor, this is something that has value, and once we begin to treat it as such, then that's where we can actually start building an economy around that.
Yeah. And you've worded it so well. It's like it's labor. It's not just a hobby. The minute because a hobby is something you don't get paid for. It's really as simple as that. It's something you find joy in on its own. And then the minute you decide to get paid for it, that's now labor. That's now your source of income, and you need to respect it and treat it as such.
Exactly.
No, I completely agree. And I like that you use that word asset.
Right.
That you giving your skill, giving your time, giving your talent is an asset for whoever you're selling it to.
Absolutely.
And I feel like the minute people start seeing it as such, they'll be able to, wrap their heads around this thing of, wait, I actually should get paid. I actually should have a rate card.
Yeah.
See where to go.
I'm actually bringing value to this table, to the table. So I ought to be treated as such, and the thing I'm bringing ought to be treated as a thing of value. So
exactly, because it's so difficult for, especially in the creative industry, to put that word in their value.
Right.
Because so many people undervalue a lot of what we do and a lot of how we move, how we do our things.
Yeah.
So that's actually really good. I completely agree with you. So moving on, we touched on the word lightly, but yes, IP.
Right.
It terrified me when I was recently talking to one of the essay winners. We had an essay competition for our workshop. Her name's Rafilwe, name drop. And we were discussing, because one of the things they want is being able to turn their essay concept into a film concept. So I'm currently helping some of them do that, her being included. And I mentioned IP, and she looked at me and she smiled and she was like, what is is that? And I was just like, Jesus, oh my gosh, sorry, blasphemy. But it was really, really scary to me because I find that it's something so important. But then I thought back on my own life and I realized that I didn't know IP until 2 years ago, which is really, really late. And this is coming from someone who went to university and studied this for 4 years and only learned about this in MTF, which was like a year or two later.
Right.
So if I hadn't won that, if I hadn't gone to that,
you would know.
I would still not know.
Yeah.
I would probably not be having this conversation with you right now.
Right.
So I really do think it's quite important because people don't know.
No, you're right. I mean, I think the biggest challenge with starting the consultancy was realizing that the first part of the work was going to be educating people because people do not know what IP is. But again, I think just to segue into what it is, just briefly, intellectual property refers to, first of all, as the word says, it's property.
There we go.
So you own it. It has value. You can sell it. You can trade it. You can do whatever. But it's a form of property that is produced by application of one's creative capacities, right? So it is largely an intangible asset in the sense that, you can have a house and you can touch a house and you can say, this is my house.
Yeah.
But intellectual property is more of the intangible aspects of what you're producing. So you write a script, right? There is that paper that you have, but the paper itself is not the property. It's the idea that is on paper. That's the property. So that's basically what intellectual property is. And I think, again, going back to that point of, how do people monetize of their creative capacities, it's, again, the lack of understanding of that this is a form of property that you're producing.
Going back to the asset chat.
Right, yeah.
Whoa. So then now, if we're looking at it like property, and we're using that wonderful word, intellectual, what I'm getting from your explanation is basically, I'm just going to be repeating it a bit, is that it's, intangible, it's something you can't touch, but it's mainly an idea. It's taking an idea, Inception. It's taking an idea and basically putting a sticker on it that says, this is mine. This is mine.
Right.
This is the value I'm placing on it.
Absolutely.
So it's being able to basically put value on something that previously didn't have a lot of value.
Right.
Because, do you have any idea? I'm not too sure, but do you have any idea when exactly this started getting serious in terms of intellectual property chats? Because it sounds like something recent, but something tells me this has been a thing. We just only recently learned about it.
I mean, it goes as far back as people have been creating. I think it just depends on the different contexts at which you look creativity, at which we understand creativity through. But the modern sort of Western understanding of intellectual property, which we have now, which focuses on ownership of the. So basically, the idea behind having an intellectual property framework is that people who create need to be credited for their work and they need to be protected in such a way that they can have economic benefit from their work. So that idea, I think, can be traced as early as sort of the 1800s with what was known as the Berne Convention at the time.
Oh, wow.
So it was a convention basically regulating the copyright and the artistic and literary works to say, okay, when somebody creates this, we need to afford them 1, 2, 3 protections. We need to make sure that nobody copies their work and exploits it for economic benefit without their consent. We need to make sure that they are credited for their work and all of those, all of those protections that come with that. So it's been around for quite a long time. And then again, even in, the African context, even looking at Botswana, I think we've always had some form of it. It's only that as opposed to this sort of Western way of understanding it where ownership is focused on an individual, to us, ownership was communal.
Yes.
So it was never really a thing of...
it's just you.
Yeah, of it's just you. It was... things were shared amongst the community, songs were shared amongst the community,
Exactly, yeah.
ways of doing things were shared, within the community. So then now it's only now that we are beginning to sort of individualize it as we adopt more and more the global sort of way of understanding it.
Funny you should say that,
Yeah.
because it actually relates to a story I've recently read where it involves Shakira, the 2010 song Samina
Right.
Mina.
Right. Right.
And so it was actually released that isn't she made it seem like she made it up on her own, and then some guy, I think in Brazil, claimed that
Yeah.
it was actually his, and then it was then traced back all
Yeah.
the way to an African country. I genuinely don't remember the name,
Right.
but that one, when they went there, they
Right.
couldn't now pinpoint it to a specific person because they saw that a certain group had sung it.
Right.
But even then,
Yeah.
they weren't sure who wrote it.
Right.
They weren't sure who created it.
Right.
And it was exactly what you're saying. It was it was a communal song. It was a
Right.
song that everyone knew, everyone
Yeah.
had heard.
Right.
And everyone was just like, yeah, no, that's a song. And when the guys came through and they put it on the album and they sang it, everyone was like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
everyone knows it. They sang it really
Exactly.
well. and so then I definitely get where you're coming from, where it's definitely within a lot of African cultures, if I can say, but especially in that sense of community, and especially in that
Exactly.
sense of this is ours rather than mine. So
Yeah.
maybe that's another reason why it's so difficult for us to really make that shift. Besides the
Right.
fact that this is information a lot of us are only now learning.
Right.
It's also just a thing of it's difficult to individualize yourself from
Right.
a culture that has told you again and again and again, it's us.
Yeah, it's not individual centered, it's more community centered. But I think it's also worth noting that a lot of African countries are trying to find a middle ground or a way of integrating our traditional understandings of IP
Oh, yeah?
into modern legal frameworks. For example, in Botswana, the Industrial Property Act provides for registration of traditional and indigenous knowledge. So,
Oh, thank
for
goodness.
example, if if there's a certain way of brewing a certain beer that is known by a certain community,
Yeah.
that community can have that process registered, and it's protected as a process that belongs to that community. The challenge comes in with making sure that the community benefits, because again, like I said earlier in the beginning, we're seeing the West and other people are coming in to take ideas and to take ways of doing things and to monetize them in their own context. Now, the purpose behind having a law like that is that when they do come and they do, say, okay, we're going to take this and mass produce it, then my community, my village can be able to say, okay, this is our thing, so we deserve a portion of whatever the income that you're making because you're using our recipe, our product.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the tricky part is setting up structures to make sure that those communities benefit, actually get the money to, if I come in as, maybe, for example, as an American and I come to your village and I say, oh, okay, I like how you guys mix this paint with that one and do that. And I go back and I mass produce that. We still lack the structures of making sure that I pay you
Actually pay you.
Yeah, and even if I pay you, to make sure that the money actually helps the whole community.
And not just the one guy who's maybe running everything.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So I guess we still have a long way to go, but I guess it's a start.
It's a good start, yeah.
It's a foundation.
Yeah.
Now we just need to build and rebuild
Absolutely.
from there. No, I completely get you. So then now that we fully understand, creativity in terms of how to monetize it, what it looks like monetized,
Right.
we then move to the other topic, which is copyright.
Right.
So then I don't know. It's very difficult for me to keep information in my head sometimes because I keep forgetting the difference between
Right.
IP and copyright, if there
Yeah.
even is a difference.
Yeah.
But like those words are thrown around a lot,
Absolutely.
especially nowadays. The copyrights, especially nowadays, where more and more people. I mean, if you just go on Twitter,
Yeah.
there's so many tweets now that just tell people don't post your movie film
Yeah.
ideas on here
Yeah.
because it was a big thing actually. I think a year or two ago where like there were a lot of tweets
Right.
that were just like, oh my gosh, how would you guys write this? Or oh my gosh,
Yeah.
what's it like? How would you make this? What TV
Right.
pilot would you be interested in watching?
Right.
And people would make threads
I know.
on just like, listen, here's the
Yes,
pilot, here's
yeah.
the season arc, here's a
Right.
whole episode breakdown.
Yeah.
And a year later, it's in the box office.
Yeah.
So it obviously wasn't, that bad, but it had the potential of becoming even worse.
Yeah,
And we don't
yeah.
know how far it got.
Absolutely.
So there was a lot of talk on know how to copyright your stuff, know how to basically just make sure that you own
Right.
whatever ideas you come up with. So
Absolutely.
yeah, I just want to get a better understanding of copyright and copyright in relation to IP. Like how does one interact with the two?
All right. Now, okay, I think the foundation to start from is intellectual property as like this broad concept that recognizes different forms of property
Okay.
depending on how they are created and the scope of application within which they fall. So then the most common ones would be copyright, would be patent, would be trademarks. We have industrial designs, we have traditional knowledge, we have personality rights, So there's all these there's all these subcategories.
I
So
see.
copyright then is a subcategory of intellectual property.
Okay, so it's IP, and then under IP, it's copyright.
It's copyright.
Okay.
And then copyright specifically is the form of protection that applies to artistic and literary works. So it applies to music, it applies to dance, it applies to writing, it applies to visual art. So it's basically a protection that's afforded to a creator. Primarily when you create something, the copyright. So the copyright basically means it's a bundle of rights that belong to the person who either created the thing or to whom those rights have been transferred to. So maybe you wrote a script, but then you transfer the rights of ownership to me, so I own the copyright.
Oh my gosh, I can transfer rights too.
It's an asset, right? It's property.
It's an asset. You got me there.
It's property. You can sell it, you can buy it, you can transfer it, you can do, all of that.
Absolutely.
So the bundle of rights then that are included in copyright, primarily it's the right to economically exploit the work, right?
Okay.
It's the right to reproduce the work. It's the right to prevent other people from reproducing and exploiting the work. So when we say then copyright, we basically means I have these set of rights about what can be done and what can't be done about my work. And I hold those rights, or I own those rights, right?
Okay, so it's like a rule book.
Right.
It's like a rule book of what you can and can't do with this idea that I have now created.
Right.
And unless I transfer these rights to someone,
Absolutely.
this is my rule book.
Yeah.
Unless I give you the
Yeah.
rule book.
Unless I
Anyone
give you
else.
the permission, you cannot do any of those things. That exclusively belongs to me.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think also it's worth noting that when it comes to copyrights, so there's two sets of rights. There's what are known as economic rights and there's what are known as moral rights. So economic rights are the ones that deal with you can sell this, you can reproduce this, you can copy this, you can adapt this into a film, right?
Yeah.
So those deal with the economic activity around that particular piece of work. And then the moral rights deal with credit and accreditation, where the creator, no matter if they've transferred the economic rights to someone else, you can write a script and then you say, okay, I'm going to transfer the economic rights to you so you can adapt it, you can copy it, you can do whatever, you can sell it if you want to. But the moral right that deals with credit, so you basically say, I want to be acknowledged as the person who created this. Alternatively, I don't want to be acknowledged as the person who created this. And that's a set of rights that, depending on the legal jurisdiction, because intellectual property laws are very jurisdictional.
So it depends on which country you're in.
Yeah, so it depends on which country you're in. But in Botswana, that's a set of rights that cannot be transferred. So you cannot transfer that right, or you cannot buy that right for someone. So if you made a painting and you signed your name on it, I can't buy the right to remove your name on it. So it really depends on you to say, I want my name on it or I don't want my name on it. And that's a right that exclusively belongs to the creator. So the economic rights deal with the money, the sale, all of that. And then the moral rights deal with the credit of who made this.
Okay. So then under Botswana law,
right.
I create something and then automatically that's copyrighted, right? Like that's mine.
Right.
And I can then transfer the rights for it to be edited or used in any way to you.
Right.
However, in terms of the moral rights, in terms of accreditation, I have to say whether or not I want my name to be credited or not, to say that I created it.
Absolutely.
You can't decide for yourself, even if you bought my copyrights.
Yes.
Unless we've agreed.
Absolutely.
You can't be like, okay, this is mine now, so I can basically say you didn't create it.
Absolutely.
Can't do that.
Absolutely.
It has to be in writing.
It has to be the creator is the one who has the right to decide. There's this problem that a lot of people I see talking about on social media where they're like, I hired a photographer, so that falls within copyright.
Watermark, yes.
I hired a photographer, I paid them for the shoot, and they put their watermark on the picture. I didn't want it there, so I'm going to remove it. Now, and
is that illegal?
It is.
Oh no.
Because when we first begin with understanding how creation of copyright works, it's okay, if you create something, the rights belong to you. Unless you create them in a circumstance where somebody else commissioned you to do the work, then the right belongs to the person who commissioned you to do the work. However, now the moral rights don't come with that economic bundle. So they always remain with the creator. So if I hire a photographer and he takes, a really nice picture of me and puts his watermark across my face, he kind of has a legal right to do that. He kind of has a legal right to do that. And I can't take that right away from him. If I crop the picture, remove the watermark, do whatever I do with the picture, he can sue for copyright infringement.
Hey, tables have been turned.
He can sue for copyright infringement because he's like, you denied me the credit that comes with the work that I put in, and I have a legal right to be credited. So,
photographers, are you listening? Are you taking notes?
I hope they are.
Just be like, oh, okay. So the most I could do is just be like, can you please put your watermark in the corner?
Right.
That's it.
We can come to an agreement of please move it there, or can you make it smaller, or can you not put it? And then if the photographer agrees that okay, fine, I'm not going, then.
But legally, they're allowed. And I know what a lot of photographers do is they also try and make it part of the bundle where whenever you post them, you have to tag them if they have social media.
Right.
So that can be another form of accreditation.
Absolutely. I mean, also, times are evolving, and the law doesn't always catch up as fast as the real world. So the question then becomes, what counts as accreditation? And personally, in my own legal opinion, I think if the photographer says, when you post it, tag me, that is a form of accreditation, and they have a right to be acknowledged as the creator whenever that happens. So I think it could be a legally enforceable right. I don't know. I'm waiting for a client who will come and say, let's sue somebody for not doing that.
Okay, let's go. Okay, I mean, great. Okay, so we have moved a bit off from writing, but basically, accreditation is incredibly important, and it's a right that the creator owns.
Right.
I mean, owns.
Absolutely.
So then, all right, great. So then, I mean, that I think that covers majority of what we wanted to cover today. Just, creative economy, IP, copyright. What is it?
Absolutely.
So definitely before we close, I mean, just tell us a bit more about yourself. Tell us about your company. Like, you are here. You're in Botswana, bro. I still can't believe it.
No, it was founded from I've always been, like I mentioned earlier, I've always been passionate about creativity. I've always been passionate about, I really love creativity so much that sometimes when I travel with friends, I get into a city and you're with your friends and everybody's like making plans of where I want to go there, I want to go there. I'd be like, okay, where are the museums and the galleries? After that, they're like, oh, where else do you want to go? I'm like, no, I'm done. Like I'll be back at the hotel if you guys need me. I've seen it all. I'm fine. I've always loved that. I'm that kind of person who I don't cry often, but I could cry if I just hear someone sing so beautifully. Yay. That I find that art and creating, I always say to people that creating is the closest approximation to God that we can do, wow. that we can have as human beings, because He's a creator, and when we create, that's the closest exercise of godliness that we can do. It's such a powerful thing.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
That my passion for that, and it's me wanting to study law and wanting to become a lawyer because I saw 5 episodes of Suits.
I mean, it's Suits. I mean, they're pretty convincing.
They're pretty convincing, and it's all please don't watch Suits and go to law school. Just take it from me. Don't do that. But I always had a passion for advocacy, and so law for me was a very obvious trajectory. And then intellectual property then was sort of a confluence of the two. It's like, okay, yes, I like the advocacy. I like, the advocacy aspect of it. But I'm also such a creative. And I'm like, okay, we can bring these two together. And there's an area of law for that. Yeah. Perfect. So
I'm here, first day of class. What's up?
Right? I knew from the first day of class that, okay, no. And in school, you only took IP in 4th year, 5th year. Whoa. So I had to wait 4 years for it to be like, yeah.
Wow, no. Now we're
my thing is right at the end of this. So
they made you work for it, eh?
No, they really made me work for it. But we've been in operation for about a year now, and we've carried out workshops in Botswana. We've carried out workshops in Tanzania, workshops in Kenya, and we are growing steadily, beautifully, and we're also open, to doing more work, whether it's with government, parastatals, private entities. Whoever recognizes that there's an opportunity in the creative sector and they want to be a part of it, listen, we're here.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yes.
Please. But no, this is incredible. I think your initiative is so amazing.
Thank you.
So necessary, especially the future we've been talking about for where the creative industry is going in Botswana and in Africa as a whole.
Yeah.
So it has been great having you on here. We will be accrediting you. We will be leaving his contact details, his social media handles, because I'm pretty sure that a lot of people listening will have quite a lot of questions.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, we don't have enough time to really go into detail, but he does. And we would love it if you'd get into contact with him. I mean, the more creatives that know about their rights and copyrights and IP and all of these things, the better. Because at the end of the day, more international collaboration is going to happen. I mean, we always say Netflix, but there's guys, there are so many other broadcasting companies out there that are dying for books from us, for films, for series. Yeah. And we need to make sure that when those contracts get, pulled up, we also know what's going on. So please do get in contact with him when you have the chance. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. This is our first one. Oh my goodness. But thank you so much. Please enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
And this is Nikita signing out. Bye.